and welcome back to the next stage in our room game tutorial. Today we're going to extend from what we did last time and we're going to add some walls into the game. So what we should have by the end of this video is a basic game, a bit like we had before, with our moving sprite, with the caret keys. But now we've got walls that if we collide with are solid and we can't go through them. Okay, so I can move anywhere else in the room, but as soon as I hit the wall, they are solid. So we can start building rooms with our walls. Okay, to start with this, you need to go and download the template code that I've given you on the link shared, and it should look something like this. Basically where we finished off last time. We've got our constants for our colors and our screen width and height. We've got our player class that we added in last time, which has an init for creating the player sprite. Remember, this is inheriting the sprite class that exists in Pygames. We are creating a surface for our sprite and filling it white. We are getting the coordinates and setting the default speed. And we've got a method for changing speed and updating the speed on the screen depending on what key is pressed. Then we've got our basics for adding the player to a sprite list down here, creating this player and adding it to a list called all sprites. Then inside our while loop, we've got our events for pressing the keyboard buttons down to move it, and pressing the key, let go of the keyboard, key up to then stop it moving again. Okay, and then obviously drawing our things onto the canvas down here. So this is all inside our while loop. Okay, so as we've just said, we have currently got a class for the player. Well, what we're going to do today, we're going to add another class, but this time for a wall object, because it is very different from a player in the way it's going to behave. So I'm going to do wall class. It's going to be here. And just like always, we go class, I'm going to call it wall, and we're going to inherit the Pygame sprite the class that already exists, passing it in, so it's building on it. Then we've got our init class, our constructor method for the wall. And as always, we go def __ init self, because so it can refer to itself. We're going to have x, a y, a width, a height, and we're going to have a color attribute for this one. So we've got quite a few different values being passed in here, okay? So the x and y are the position where it's going to be placed on the room. The width and the height are obviously how wide and how high it is, and the colour is the colour of the wall to allow us to have different coloured walls within our rooms over time. Right, what are we going to do next? Well, same as we've done in previous ones, we are going to pass in the init, or link the init from the superclass, which is the sprite basically. So this is going to inherit all the init methods from the sprite class that exists within Pygame to give access to all the sprite functions. Then, the same as we did before, we're going to make a surface for the wall. So let me just put it here so we've got a comment. Make surface for wall. How do we do that? We go self.image equals pygame.surface open brackets. Now inside our brackets here, we're going to have two properties. We're going to have a width, and we're going to have a height, comma, height. Close square brackets, close round brackets. So we're passing in a width and a height value from here. It's taking in the width and height to create a surface for whatever width and height the wall has been set to. And then we are going to fill it with a color. Fill that surface with a color. Self.image.fill. Now we could manually set the color here, but because we want different color walls, we're going to take in the parameter that's been passed in up here, and we're going to use that to set the color of our wall. So we can have different color walls. So this is creating a new surface with the width and the height that have been passed in, and filling it with a color that's also been passed in. So that's going to be run when this wall method is run, when the wall is created basically. Now, same as we did in the last one, we're going to make top left corner the right position. So basically we can place it in the room. Self.rect, we did this with the player as well. self.image.get rect. So it's going to get the rectangle that we've just created, and we're going to set the y coordinates to its y position and the self.rect.x to its x position. So we're basically setting the x and the y position as its very corner, so we can manipulate it and move it in the room. Okay, and that is basically it. That is all we need to create a wall. The walls aren't going to do much, they're not going to move, they're not going to shoot things, they're just going to be created and sit there. And then our player is going to react to them. So that's all we need for our wall class. The constructor method with the creating the surface and setting its position so we can put it in the room. Okay, right. Now we've got a class to use for that, we now need to actually do something with it. So I'm going to go down here until we find this all sprites list here. Okay, so we've got a list at the moment for all sprites. But we're now going to make a list, a wall list, a list to store all the walls in so we can manipulate it separately. So guess what? We're going to call it wall list. Wall list equals pygame.sprite.group bracket bracket. So we're making a list to store all the walls in basically as we create them. There could be one wall or it could be 10 or 15 walls, doesn't matter. Okay, so that's creating a list ready to use. Now we need to actually make the walls. So how do we do that? Remember, we've got this class now, and passing into that class is the x, the y, the width, the height and the color. So that's what we need to use to make a wall. So down here, make walls. To make a wall, we're going to go wall equals wall, which is the name of the class, and then our values. Now I'm going to start making one on the left side of the screen. So I'm going to set it to 0, 0, which is the very corner. I'm going to make it 10 wide and 600 height. So it's going to be a thin wall, but it's going to be all the way down the side of the screen. And then finally, the final property is going to be our color. Well, now remember, we've got colors already in here. If I got to here, we've got black, white, blue, and I've even put one called yellow here as well. So I'm going to use the blue color that's already been defined at the top here. So go back down here again. I've gone past it. Where is it? It's blue. Make wall. Wall equals wall capital wall 0, 0, xy, 10 wide, 600 high, and the color blue. So that's going to make a wall. However, it hasn't added it yet to our list, so we're going to go wall list dot add, and we're going to add that new wall to our list. And then finally, we're also going to add it to our all sprite list as well. So if we want to do things with it, we can affect all the sprites, just like we've done in previous examples. All sprite list, account type dot add wall. So we're adding it to both lists. So that should give us now one wall in our game. Let's have a look. If we run that now. Oh look, I've got one wall going down the left hand side. Okay, let's add one more. Let's have a go at adding one more wall going along the top this time. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. Now, if you want to be a little bit cheaty, you can kind of copy this, and I'm going to paste it. Copy and paste. Man's best friend. So this is our, just to make it clear, this is our vertical wall on the left. We're going to make this one our horizontal wall at the top. What do I need to change for that? Well, let's look at this. I'm going to set this to 10, so it's not going over the other one. It's just starting to the right of it, our x position. 0 is our y position, so it's going to be at the top of the screen. However, this is the important bit. I'm going to make it 790 wide, which is the whole width of the room, and I'm going to make it 10 high. Still going to make it blue as well. So I've just changed really the slight start position, and then I've almost like reversed the height and the width to make it go along the top. And then just like before, it's adding it to our walls list and adding it to the all sprites list. So I now should have two walls, one vertical and one horizontal. And if I run it, here's my wall in the room. I've just lost it. Give me 1 second. Here's my walls at the top and on the left. However, we have a problem. So the walls are nice, they look nice, but at the moment, if I go up to them, oh, I can go through them. So at the moment we've got walls, but nothing happens when the player collides with the walls. So that is a problem. Let's fix that problem. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to think, how can we check each wall in the room as the player is moving and make sure that it hasn't collided with it? Well, to do that, we need to add some events. In fact, we actually need to make a change to one that exists already. I want you to go to the player class, and inside we have an event here called update. Now this one's important because this is the one that's going to be checking the walls. But for it to check the walls, it needs to know where the walls are. So what we're going to do, we're going to make a change here. We're going to add into the method here, comma, walls. We're going to pass in a new attribute to give it access to all the walls that exist. Now we could directly link it to the list, but in the future when you have multiple rooms and things, you want to be able to pass this in so you can update them as you go. Okay, so that's why we're passing it in as a parameter here. So inside the player update method, I've just added in walls here inside the brackets. Okay. All right, at the moment, that's not actually going to do anything much, because what we've actually got to do is pass the value in now. So what we're going to do is go down right to near the bottom, where we, inside our while loop here, where we run the update method, we're going to change this now. Instead of updating all the sprites lists, we're going to change that to update the player update method, just the player one. Okay, and remember, now we've changed it, it needs to be passed in the walls to it. So where are our walls stored? Well, we made a list for that, so I'm going to pass in the name of our list. Now at the moment we've only got one list and one room essentially, but in the future we're going to have multiple rooms and things, so we can change this as it's running. So that's why it's important to do it this way. So I've changed it from all sprites update to the player update, and I've passed in the name of our list, wall list, which is all the walls we've created and put in the list. Okay, so now our player knows what the walls are. However, at the moment, it's not checking if it's collided with it. So we're going to go back up here, back up to this update method for our player. So the player class, just help you find it, and go down to the update method. I'm going to put some space in here to make it nice and clear. Okay, so what do we need to do? At the moment, we've got a code here that updates the X position and code that updates the Y position, changes the Y position on the screen as you move with the arrow keys and things. Okay, as the player is moving, we now need to check to make sure if it's hit any of the walls. Okay, so how are we going to do that? There are different ways of doing this. This is the way that I think makes sense and is easiest to explain. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make another list of all the blocks that I've basically collided with. So how do we do this? So under the self-rect X, not the Y one, we're going to check the X direction first. So we're going to check for collisions, check for wall collisions. Any collisions on the X axis moving left or right basically. So we're going to make a new list here. Just trust me, I'll explain. Block hit list. So a list of any blocks that have been hit. And we're going to use pygame dot sprite collide, and then we need to tell it what things we're going to collide and check. Well, we're going to check to see if the player itself, the self, has collided with any of the walls which have been passed into this update one here. Remember, the walls in the list, and false. Can you remember what the false was for? Well, if I put true, it's going to remove the wall when we hit it. We don't want to do that in this case. We just want it to detect that it's collided with it. So I'm going to leave that to false, so it doesn't delete any walls that are there. Okay. Now we've got to check through each block in that list. So we're going to use a little count controlled loop here for block in block hit list. So basically for every block in the block list, we're going to say, whoops, our loop, if it's hit an object, if self.change x is greater than 0, let me code this and I'll explain. Self.rect.right equals block rect dot left. So what is that doing? So basically, if it's going to the right and it hits a wall, instead of going through the wall, it's going to make the right position of the player the same as the left of the block that it's hit, which basically stops it going through the wall. So imagine you've got a wall on the right here. When it hits it, it's going to make the right of the sprite the same as the left of the block to stop it going through. So that deals with us moving to the right. Now we can simply go else self.rect left equals block.rect right. So basically doing the opposite. Else, if it's hit a block on the left side, we're going to set the left to the right of the block. So we've got dealing now with blocks on the right and blocks on the left. This is detecting a collision. Any block gets collided in the wall, and it's stopping it going through it by setting the right or left position of the rectangle to the left or the right of the wall to stop it going through. That's quite confusing, okay? But if we run it now, hopefully we should see some progress. So now, if I go to this wall on the left, boom, it's hit the wall, but now I can't go through because as soon as it hits that wall, it's going, well, that's beyond, so it's setting the left side position to the right of the wall and not letting it go through. And it'd be the same thing if I had a wall on the right, but now we can go through. However, at the moment, I can still go through the block at the top. Whoop, it goes through. It's detecting a collision, but doing something a bit weird. So guess what? We've got to do the same thing here now, but for the blocks at the top. And again, good old friend copy and paste can save us some time with this. I'm going to copy and paste the whole of this X wall collision. Copy, copy, copy. I'm going to go down here to where we've changed the Y. Make sure I'm in line. And paste. However, because it's the Y, we've got to change this to Y. So I'm going to change that to Y. If Y is bigger than 0, change the self-rect bottom position to the top of the block and change the self.rect top to the bottom of the rect. So basically, again, if it hits a sprite at the top of the room, it's setting its position to the bottom and vice versa for the bottom going down, okay? So we're detecting if the Y position is beyond it and then setting the X and the Y position to either the top of the rectangle or the bottom of the rectangle, depending if it's at the top or the bottom of the screen. So that should now have fixed our issue of going up or down. Let's try it again. So we've got our left one, can't go through there. And if I go to the top, same thing now, I can't go through the top. So we've got collision detecting for top and bottom and left and right. Okay, so what you've just done is you have added walls, an ability to add walls in the room, and in the update method of our player class, you are now checking for the collisions and stopping it going through either the X wall collision or the Y wall collision. Okay, we've got a method of detecting the X and the Y. Okay, challenge time. Okay, now you know how to create walls like we've done down here. Okay, at the moment we've just got two walls on the left top and right, left top vertical, horizontal and left vertical. I now want to see, can you add some more walls to make this into a proper room? And it should look something like this. So I've got walls on my left top, and I've also created some walls in the middle of the room. And notice this one, I've made them thicker and I've got a different colour as well using that colour property. So I've started to build in some walls around the outside and something to go through in the middle there. Now, if notice I can't go through it unless I go through that gap. So I've actually got two walls there in yellow. Okay, see if you can build up a room using the walls that we've just learned how to use. Good luck.